Imagine racing your bike for 224 miles, sleeping for a few hours, then getting up and racing for another 224. Then doing it again and again for 18 days in a row. Oh, and throw in 220,000 feet of climbing. And at the end of it all, someone shoves a camera in your face and asks you about your threshold power, your training hours, race advice for beginners, and what gear ratio you used. In this video, I'm that guy with the camera, and this is my friend Evan finishing the 2021 Trans Am bike race.
There it is. The fourth and final time.
Fourth and final.
Finally, definitely final.
This is the best race you've never heard of. In 1976, to commemorate the bicentennial of the Declaration of Independence in the United States, a group organized a series of tours along the Trans-America Bicycle Route, which spans from Astoria, Oregon to Yorktown, Virginia. In 2014, the route became the course for an annual self-supported time trial race. There are no prizes, there's no drafting, no teams, no support crew. Just gas station food, motels, sleeping bags, and a running clock that ticks till you hit the opposite ocean.
Hey, congratulations, man. Great race.
Thank you very much.
And this guy here is the race winner, Kraig. I made him answer some questions too. Kraig's win over Evan was particularly impressive given that Evan has finished on the podium every single time he's done the Trans Am. Also, Evan is a former record finish time holder and the 2017 champion. In this video, I'm going to recap the thrilling 2021 duel between these two and share tips on how to crush the Trans Am for yourself. But before we get into it, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's new and small, so every subscriber is valued. Also, stick around because I'm going to share Evan and Kraig's threshold power numbers and the different strategies to winning this race. If you find this video helpful, please slap the like button to appease the YouTube algorithm. The Trans Am is a spectator sport because each racer carries a GPS tracker that syncs with a website and this map here. On day one, Kraig and Evan announced their intentions by gapping the field. The typical script for a self-supported race like this is for one or two leaders to perform a monster push during the first few days that opens up a lead. The rest of the race sees the leaders build on that lead. Oftentimes, it's a single leader that runs away from the field, and the interesting race actually occurs for minor placings. Every now and then, a chase is mounted and fireworks fly. In the 2016 edition, Lael Wilcox won in dramatic fashion when the race leader made a game-changing blunder. He awoke from a quick nighttime roadside nap and rode in the wrong direction until he backtracked into Lael. The two were unsure what to do, so they rode full gas side by side until Lael cracked him. In this edition, early on, the racers were smashed with inclement weather.
I was concerned.
That's
about
actually the warmest kit I've ever had.
Really?
For this race. It's by far the coldest.
Oh, God,
we
I
had
couldn't believe
so
it,
much
man.
cold and so much rain, and
Sure.
it's a big stress to the body to
I
come
know.
back from that.
Well,
And
I
I
was
think
thinking that it gave
I
me
do
a
well
little
in the
bit of
heat. I
advantage
don't
just
do well
because
in the
I
cold
was- Sure.
generally, and
Sure.
I think that really did affect me. Yeah, you had warmer clothes for sure.
And I thought they gave me a slight advantage.
Yeah,
So-
definitely.
This brings me to tip number one. Figure out your cold weather gear. There's no one-size-fits-all system. You may need more or less depending on what your needs are and what your goals are. The trick is to keep your system compact and light, but still substantial enough to keep you from freezing. Being too cold zaps your energy. Evan had a slight 30-minute lead at the end of day one. On day two, Kraig opened up a minor lead by resting about an hour less and took off with a head start. On day three, Evan was still shadowing Kraig. By day four, Evan slipped back, trailing by 45 miles, a lead that Kraig widened through Wyoming and Colorado. Kraig's lead ballooned to over 165 miles, and it appeared as though he would run away with the race, and there was speculation that he would threaten the course record. In the back of your mind, were you trying to break his record when you started?
I was trying to win. And I had a point where I thought I might be able to break it, but I also had the pressure from Evan, and it was like, don't try to get the record and lose the possibility of the win.
That would be a big risk if you go
Yeah.
for it. I was probably more time focused than anything, but that went out the window early for me. I did not have a good first week.
Sure.
I had just a couple really bad days.
In Colorado, a bike shop swapped out Evan's rear tire for a non-tubeless tire. This was a potentially life-threatening mistake. Most race leaders forego tubes in their tires. Instead, they inject a latex sealant that plugs up any micro gaps, and the tire does double duty as the tube in the tire. The sealant continues to plug up any holes picked up by thorns and glass, giving a degree of protection from flat tires. But a traditional tube plays an important role in keeping a tire attached to the rim of a wheel. As the tube inflates, it pushes against the bead of the tire that locks into the groove along the rim wheel. Tubeless tires are made with a Kevlar loop in the bead that allows it to snap into the rim's hook or groove. Without that Kevlar loop, a road tire is usually inflated with enough pressure that the tire can pop off the rim of the wheel. Back on the road, Evan realized his rear wheel was bleeding air, but he couldn't figure out why. So for the next 80 miles, which involves some significant descents, he stopped and pumped air into his tire. Eventually, he got to a bike shop in Pueblo. After some kind shop employees helped him switch out his tire, he was ready to make an assault on the 12-hour lead that Kraig had wedged between them. I spoke to Evan on day 11. He told me he was feeling good, and he had already calculated what to do about the ferry across the Ohio River, some 2 days away. It closes daily at 9:40 p.m. Many spectators theorized that Evan was going to race to make the ferry on the same day as Kraig's crossing, which was not Evan's plan. Evan told me that he didn't think he could catch Kraig unless Kraig had some bad luck, but he was going to try and apply some pressure. Kansas was the start of a 4-day push that saw Evan chew up over 120 miles of Kraig's lead. Evan did this while dealing with a pretty horrific medical issue, but being a medical doctor is one of Evan's wildcard strengths. Being trained in emergency medicine, he's in a better position to decide what needs to be done when his body is injured. This leads me to tip number 2, play to your strengths. Being the physically strongest racer doesn't mean you'll win this race.
You told me before
Right.
we started this, you had the best power numbers you've had in your life. What does that
Well,
look
maybe
like
not quite the best, but like I guess like an hour threshold would be around 320-ish.
You're 140 pounds.
What's that? Yeah, I had 140 pounds.
That's insane.
So that's, yeah, and you know, I will tell you, when I was chasing Kraig, I was keeping up higher power this time for that point in the race than I've ever kept up. So I had 4 really good days in a row, but yeah. You know, this race is not about your hour threshold either. It's about just, and to give an example, I mean, gosh, if you can ride at 50% of your threshold as a normalized power, you're really, that's hard to do. Like you're at most of the time riding at like between a third to 40% of your threshold. So yeah, an hour threshold can be a little misleading, but that's sort of where, you know, where I started at.
I'm a weak old man, and it's like I'm not even close to what Evan is in power, and I think I'm like 260, and I weigh 160.
When Kraig said he was old and slow, that isn't exactly accurate. Here's a chart from Andy Kogan. It's a good ballpark for how strong competitive bike racers are. 90% of the population fall into the first 2 rungs of the ladder. Most amateur racers never progress beyond a moderate or Cat 4 level. Based on Kraig's power to weight ratio, he falls in line with what you would expect from a Category 3 racer, which is pretty good, and at age 54 he can probably line up at a local road race alongside people who could be his kids. Evan, on the other hand, can put out power consistent with a Category 1 racer, or an amateur that can compete at a national level. On paper, this truly is David versus Goliath, and it played out in Old Testament fashion. Chapeau to Kraig for figuring out how to beat Evan. There are various ways to win this race, and marginal gains are everywhere. Are you someone who excels at packing an organized bag quickly? If you spend 10 minutes less per day fussing with your bags, over the course of 2 weeks, you've saved yourself over 2 hours and bought yourself about 30 miles. Are your bike mechanic skills superior? You may save yourself another few hours. Can you sleep rolled up between doormats?
Well, I used a couple doormats to cover up with when I slept outside, and this one church was having a garage sale, so I found a rug that I rolled up in.
Chances are you have some strengths that translate into either speed on the bike or efficiency off the bike. Figure out what those are and lean into them. After a furious chase, the elastic snapped for Evan in Kentucky at Pippa Passes during day 15.
So
I just started struggling once I got to the Appalachians. That's when
I couldn't believe it. It was like I thought you were going to catch me, and it was like
I'm not sure what happened, honestly, because I felt great. I felt great, and then I just.
And it was like, oh man, I got a chance.
I
here.
know.
And
I don't know what it was. Like I just.
Uh-huh.
You know how you're going and
Yeah.
it's hard to predict. I cut sleep one night, and maybe I shouldn't have done that because I was on a good rhythm, but I didn't think I cut it that much. I didn't feel that tired, and then it just kind of, yeah.
Oh, dude, I loved it. It was the best race I've ever ran.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really
so
fun.
With a massive lead over third place and first out of reach, Evan decided to take some extra rest and make it home safe. This brings me to my third tip: sleep. Get good at sleep. In 2016, Evan rode side by side for much of the race with eventual winner Lael. He told me one of her biggest weapons was the ability to get off the bike and fall asleep. This may seem like a strange skill, but it's the single most important thing a multi-day racer can own. After riding and racing for 20 plus hours straight, you'd think it'd be easy to fall asleep, but it isn't. You're physically exhausted, but your mind is reliving the day and nervous about the next day. You'll lay there staring into the darkness knowing you need to sleep, but that only makes it worse. Figure it out and get good at sleep and rest.
Yeah. When's the last time you had a night of sleep?
I slept like an hour and a half a lot of nights.
Yeah.
Because you put so much pressure.
Where were you sleeping? Like, were you stopping?
The fourth and final tip is to find your balance between comfort and minimizing aerodynamic drag.
Don't dismiss aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing that allowed me to get an advantage over Evan early in the West, was the fact that I had done so much change to my kit, in my helmet, in my jersey, that I was able to reduce my drag considerably. And I had taken the highest I'd ever been able to get my bike up on descents was 45, and I hit 54 on several descents in the West. And I was able to sustain higher speed with less effort than I've ever been able to before. And I was surprised how effective the aerodynamic changes were. And I think that was what gave me enough of an advantage to get a lead, to be able to make Evan work as hard as he had to be able to hold him off. Otherwise, if I would have gone into this race with what I had prior, it might have been a different outcome.
It's interesting because when you think of aerodynamics in this race, it's not the bike. Those are minor things. It's like you can still be aerodynamic with your shirt and your helmet, because no matter how much gear you have, those are still exposed.
The
Right
rider is what, 70% it's 70% of the drag that is the total system of the bike.
Yeah.
And if you've got your jersey, it can be 40 watts of drag.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually had the same jersey. Although I got mine like in a scramble like the week before the race. The shop had ordered jerseys, they didn't come in time, so I was like scrambling, but I ended up with the same jersey.
The Aero 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get on and off.
No, I was surprised. I had to be very careful. I was afraid I was going to rip it.
Yeah. But they're comfortable, actually.
Yeah.
They stretch really well.
They worked very good.
I asked Evan and Kraig to give advice to someone who is considering racing the Trans Am, and that's what we're going to end with. But after the camera was put away, Evan added that he would have added reflective tape to his device. His bike, helmet, wheels, and bags all had reflective tape.
First off, think about it. I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not going to encourage or discourage someone, but know what you're getting into. There is, first off, safety risk. And I know that every time I do it, I think about it and decide to, risk reward what you're getting out of it. But, just realize there is a safety risk. It's pretty fresh in my mind right now. Most of the route is great. It's got a lot of cachet. It's historic. It's a pretty epic route, geographically. But, yeah, there are definitely some risks, and it's a hard route. It is a long route. Virginia's tough. I think it's a lot easier on paper than it ends up being when you do it. Although, it's a great experience, and that's why I say, like, risk reward. It's just, everyone's going to have a different threshold.
Know what you're getting into and realize that the race, people look at the elevation and they see the West and they think that it's over when they're done with the West, but it's death by 1,000 cuts in the East, and it's very, very difficult.
It's what's so interesting about this race is there's many different ways to do it, and it's not entirely clear people win with time on the bike, people win with high power, and it's a balance. Yeah, there's different strategies.
If you're interested in seeing the entire finish line conversation between Evan and Kraig, leave a comment below and I'll make it available. Thank you to Evan and Kraig for a spectacular race, congratulations to all the racers, and I wish those still on course a safe home stretch. And thank you for watching. I'll see you on the road.